Hey guys, it's Joe Barresi here. Welcome back, thanks for tuning in. We're gonna dive into a little bass guitar. For the most part, I always love recording a DI and 2 amps. Usually 1 amp is on the cleaner side, 1 amp is on the dirtier side, so I can have, a balance. 9 out of 10 times, I'll always reamp something as well. Let me just solo these up for you for a second. You can check out what's here. This is the DI track. I'm a big fan of fatter sounding directs. I mean, for me, it's really the sound of the DI, and I'll change DIs track per track actually, depending on the band and the song itself. Sometimes a DI, you want a DI that's warm and round. Sometimes you want a DI that's bright and aggressive. So it kind of depends. But you can see it has a lot of dynamic built in. I didn't level it on the way in. Here's 1 amp sound. It's got some sub to it. It's also got some pick attack. And this one's labeled bass distortion. When I put these two together, three. So I get my bottom end out of DI. And then there's a reamp track, and it sounds like this. It's got some hair on it, and unlike me. It just seems like you can get bass dirty in a track, and it really kind of holds it all together. I will spend some time getting these in phase as well. The relative phase, as we talked about earlier, for instance, obviously here's a DI, here's an amplifier, and the bass is going to go into this direct box, comes out of the direct box into an amp, out of the amp into a speaker, out of the speaker into a microphone, through a recording chain, and at that point, the amplifier sound is going to be later in time compared to the direct. So a little bit of experimenting on getting it a little better in phase. I might actually start between the DI and 1 amp, DI and 2nd amp, the 2 amps themselves, kind of flipping the phase. For the most part though, I'm looking for a blend and see how the blend works. If things don't sound like they're canceling, sometimes the cancellation, honestly, in a track that's really dense, sometimes the cancellation is good. I'm not making these decisions in solo either. At this point, the drums are gonna be going. I've had some guitars up. Is the bass cutting? What's the combination of the bass? And it could change in sections too. And this is a true story. Somebody that actually came to me one day and was like, I'm really unhappy with the mix that I've done on my album. Can you help me? And I'm like, well, what don't you like? And they were like, well, I don't really like the bass sound. There's no bottom. And I just had the person bring over the tracks and pushed them up and pushed the DI and the amp up and hit the phase on one of them, and the bass was there. And they were like, hey, that's awesome. And I'm like, yeah, it's a phase switch. So, instead of EQing the hell out of something, it's just really start to think in terms of, is it, did the engineer spend enough time moving the microphone around so actually it was reinforcing and not canceling? But a lot of times when you're recording a bass or you get tracks in that somebody else has recorded and they didn't really pay attention to certain notes or dead spots on a bass. So when you get into that spot where you have a dead spot and you have all this beautiful low end happening and then all of a sudden you get a dead spot, sometimes just putting Renaissance bass or something like it, Max bass or whatever, on that track and turning it on and off for that note. Normally I would reach for volume first. Maybe that note is not really speaking. But sometimes the note is just dead, and Renaissance bass really makes it, well, you'll hear it right now. So what I'm gonna do is just solo up this bass track. 9 out of 10 times, I'm gonna probably have the CLA 1176 up. I just wanna control it a little bit on the way into the console. I really like the way it sounds. And I'll experiment, obviously, with the attack and release just to get it, sitting nice. I'll use the black instead of the blue because the blue is really characterized as a little more distorted, which is great for bass, but it's also a bit brighter. And on this DI that I'm trying to really capture the low end, my DI is my featured. The thing is, the DI is because it's not coming out of a speaker, there's no mic picking it up, it's very solid. And I'm looking to maintain as much low end as possible. So I'm using the black instead of the blue for that reason. I always use the plugin. Plugin is very easily controllable. I might use the hardware on something else, and I only have 2, and mine are silver, which is a kind of a different ball game. And honestly, I don't really even get into the different revisions anymore. I really don't care. It just has a color to it. If this was a ballad, I might not use this 1176. I might actually use the LA2A version, something that's a little fatter and rounder. DIs for me are really kind of 75% of the bass sound. I'm just gonna insert Renaissance bass here. As you can tell, it's a little bit loud, but it's adding so much of that beautiful round bottom end that I'm missing. It's a whole nother octave down there. If our bass doesn't cut it, Mac's bass might cut it. If Mac's bass isn't cutting it, you know, maybe LoAir is gonna cut it. And I'll just give you a quick example. LoAir is one of my new discoveries. So this is obviously set for no direct. And this thing is just gargantuan on the bottom end. If you just get rid of some of this, I might actually just keep that going underneath. That's just some serious rumble down there. Renaissance bass is really my go-to. LoAir is more for like the pattier stuff or keyboard synthesizers and things that I want this kind of just super crazy fat low end. Or if I'm doing more soundtracky type stuff or something that's slower. This is a very fast song, so I'm probably not gonna use LoAir on this track. I'll also, you know, do crazy stuff like cut it out and process it differently. This probably went through some guitar pedals for this, this Barry part here. So obviously processed with some sort of EQ. But let's just check out the bass in general together. So that's kind of really it on bass.